we dealt a lot with third parties, suppliers, and everything else. And especially when we had state-sponsored cyber attacks, for example, we would get briefing with the government, with the FBI, and everything else. And in that particular briefing, we also noticed that there were some smaller organizations who were there, and they were asking themselves, why are we here? Why are we part of the briefing? And then we were notified that, hey, the smaller companies were actually the stepping stones for the bad guys, the cyber criminals, to come in, exploit to get to the big enterprise companies. So there's that angle and perspective from that. They were the stepping stones.
Welcome to the Elephant in AppSec, the podcast to explore, challenge, and boldly face the AppSec elephants in the room. I'm Alexandra, your host, joined by my amazing co-host Tristan, a former security engineer and co-founder of Escape. Today, we have an amazing guest, Catharina Budiharto, or Didi, joining us. Didi has extensive experience in cybersecurity, having worked for several years with multiple oil and gas companies. She has also served as the chairperson for the American Petroleum Institute IT Security Subcommittee. Currently, Didi is the founder of Cyberpoint Advisory, which offers fractional CISO services to help SMBs to protect their assets from cyber attacks. She has received numerous awards in cybersecurity and is a sought-after speaker at security podcasts, global conferences, and panels. Didi is passionately involved in supporting minorities, and I admire her favorite motto: "We don't let the bad guys win." I was fortunate enough to meet Didi in person a month ago. Given my experience in the oil and gas sector, I was particularly curious about the critical applications in this industry, where the supply chain involves numerous third-party applications and software vendors, each potentially introducing security risks. Beyond that, we discussed her favorite topic, the love triangle between the government, OEMs, the owners and operators regarding the shared responsibilities of securing America's critical infrastructure. Dive right in! Hi, Didi. I'm very excited to have you on the podcast. Thanks a lot for finding the time and coming and sharing your experiences with me, with our listeners. So you've been in the industry for more than 20 years, like several decades, even longer. So you have a wealth, of experience to share with everyone. And right now you're leading your own cyber agency, and actually the tagline that I've seen is like, "We don't let the bad guys win." And like, can you tell a little bit to the listeners why you decided to choose this tagline and what actually it reflects personally for you?
Okay, yeah. Well, first of all, Alexandra, thank you so much for having me as the guest. I'm excited about this. I'm very honored. So the reason behind the tagline, "We don't let the bad guys win." Let me give you a little bit of context first. So I was a CISO for multiple Fortune 500 oil and gas companies. And in my experience over 2 decades in that space, we dealt a lot with third parties, suppliers, and everything else. And especially when we had state-sponsored cyber attacks, for example, we would get briefing with the government, with the FBI, and everything else. And in that particular briefing, we also noticed that there were some smaller organizations who were there, and they were asking themselves, why are we here? Why are we part of the briefing? And then we were notified that, hey, the smaller companies were actually the stepping stones for the bad guys, the cyber criminals, to come in, exploit to get to the big enterprise companies. So there's that angle and perspective from that. They were the stepping stones. And I've also noticed, right, the smaller to medium-sized companies, they're supporting the oil and gas business, global enterprises, yet they don't necessarily have the resources to hire or to establish a formalized cybersecurity program. That's why I decided to have my own Cyberpoint Advisory firm to help those small to medium-sized businesses protect themselves from and reducing the risk from cyber attacks, cyber criminals, so that it's part of the ecosystem and to make the bad guys uh, make it very very difficult for them to actually exploit. And
Okay.
there are too many stories that personal friends and everything else, that a lot of cyber criminals now leveraging technology
Mm,
to exploit, and in terms of like cyber scams
mm,
and everything else. And personal people, I mean personal friends, these are not very wealthy people. They've
mm,
lost so much of money and wealth because being exploited by the cyber criminals. So I have a motto that we don't let the bad guys win. I want to promote the cybersecurity awareness to everyone,
mm,
not just people who are very technical, who know about cyber. No, the ones who actually not very cyber aware. I want them to be educated, to be to be engaged, so
mm,
that they don't get exploited by the cyber criminals. So twofold: one, the small to medium sized companies. I
mhm.
still don't want the bad guys to win, and then the other one is just regular citizens, regular people. We need to reach out to them, help them. And on that side, it's more like pro bono. I don't make money
Mm.
out of it, but I just want to make sure that these people are not exploited.
Okay, great. I mean, that's a very inspiring, it's motivational quote, and I think it's inspiring that you actually choose two ways to do it. And can you tell like the audience actually how you help to promote, the cyber awareness for the people who are maybe not as aware as you mentioned?
Yeah, I started what we call it the cybersecurity circle in
Mhm.
Houston. We have to
Okay.
start small. And now again, it goes back to back. Having my own firm allows me to
Mm-hmm.
have more time to give back to the community.
Mm-hmm.
As a full-time CISO, I barely had time for myself to recover, to relax. Now actually I'm able to split the time. So what I started about 3 weeks ago is called Cybersecurity Circle in Houston. There's a Houston prototype lab building called the Iron, and it started out with this guy named, a shout out to him, Joey Sanchez. Joey Sanchez is not a cyber person. He's the type of person who loves to connect people. So
Mm.
he always, every Friday at this particular location, has what is called Cup of Joey, where
Okay.
people can come in and meet. Again, they don't have to be in tech, they don't have to be in cyber. Some people are artists, some people were making food to be sold. And so anyone can come in. And Joey always asks, what is your purpose? What is your why? And
Mm.
when I met him a month ago, he said, Didi, what's your why? And I just immediately answered, I don't want the bad guys to win.
Okay.
And so he shares this Cup of Joey platform saying, I will be willing to host a cybersecurity, whatever you want to call it, cybersecurity awareness activities, where anyone, any cyber enthusiast, or any people who care, who've been affected, or who want to help other people um, about cyber awareness. So that's the how we trying to reach the message to the regular citizen people, not just through certain associations, certain groups, certain
Mm.
I guess so sometimes you have some exclusive group just
Mm.
for cybersecurity. I want it to be inclusive. Anyone can show up, and we talk about different topic every week.
Wow, that's great. I think it's a big also commitment, to talk about like to show up every week, and talk about topic. And I've seen you've been like invested in the community for a long time, starting as aerobics instructor, if I'm correct, in the 80s or 90s. And then like,
Yeah,
yeah, right? And yeah,
yeah.
it's very inspiring to see, and also being involved in diversity communities, as I could see. Was there a reason why you timed the launch of your own advisory, like website for your advisory, for the Valentine's Day, or it's just like a coincidence?
It just coincidence. Oh, you have a good memory. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was the website went up Valentine's Day. I started it. in November, but it took a while when you're doing everything yourself. It took a while to formalize, to form what I want it to look like. It's some people said there's no such coincidence, but I think the universe and God out there
Yeah.
kind of just, hey, let's make it happen on Valentine's Day.
Okay, yeah, maybe like promoting love. I don't know for cybersecurity. Yeah, and what
Hopefully,
actually, what also made you like make this decision, to take a role from a fractional CISO? Because we maybe if you can share it with others who are maybe also thinking, to make this change. They're right now working as a CISO or working as a potential like a manager and want to open their own agency. Like, why did you decide to take on this role?
the idea has been with me for a long time. My father always mentions that be your own boss.
Mm,
Uh, for whatever many reasons, culturally and everything else. And I've always had the feeling I've never been able to do it. So it was always negative. I can't do it. I can't afford to
mm,
live a full-time job. I can't afford to do
mm,
it. I don't know anything about entrepreneurs. It's
yeah,
always that negative. I cannot, I cannot, I cannot,
mm,
I cannot. So the inspiring one, finally, the universe probably pushed me towards that. I got laid off in October
mm,
of 2022. And that was finally listening,
yeah,
doing reflections. Okay, maybe this is the way how I needed to serve my purpose. Because throughout my career in the corporate world, when I come into an organization, I usually set up, transform an organization, set up
mm,
their
mm,
cybersecurity program, and I create the roadmap and everything else. And I'm very, very good at it.
mm,
And then so I'm thinking maybe I need to take it to the different areas where they cannot afford to hire full-time CISO or CISO,
mm,
some people call it.
yeah,
And then I can help them still doing the same thing what I used to do for the big corporate organizations, but doing it for the scale again. Because remember, I don't want the bad guys to win, and
yeah,
these are the markets that are being targeted by the cyber criminals because they know criminals know that small organizations do not have the resources and time to formalize or enhance their cybersecurity posture. So
okay, well,
that's the reason behind it. Combination of wanting to do it the whole time, but the negativity always prevented me from moving
mm,
forward, and realizing that we have enough. We always achieve. I'm gonna use my word here. I always think that it's not good enough. I'm not good enough. I don't make enough to start doing something new. At the end of the day, you have to appreciate what you have and and do it,
yeah.
and everything is working out. So
Yeah, I think the hardest step is actually like go and do it, and make this step, because battling with like imposter syndrome is is hard. And I actually can like on a personal level maybe relate to the small business, in oil and gas industry, because in my career I worked for like a couple of years as an equipment manufacturer that manufactured, the equipment for the oil and for more like, yeah, oil and gas production sites. And when I don't know, the security was definitely not the top priority at this part. And for example, one of the parts was like actually manufacturing all those big panels that are have a programmatic controllers inside. So like thinking about all of like whole supply chain for that was, yeah, not a part of it. And how do you actually, you come into the company like that? And I guess the first step is the IT security audit. And this is kind of your superpower. Like, I think you mentioned before when we talked together. And like, what steps would you recommend them to do, or what would you, firstly evaluate as a company, like in the oil and gas sector, that they need to take care of like third party applications, or I don't know, something like that?
yeah, yeah. You have very good memory. You've prepared really well, Alexandra. You remember all of this. I'm very impressed. Thank you. you for preparing for those points. Yes, so I don't create the same program for every organization. It depends. Usually, when they reach out to get help from me, I ask about what are your pain points? What are you really trying to do? Are you trying to just solve a particular problem, whether they have just recently had an incident or something
Yes.
else, or they're really looking for strengthening their postures to be competitive in the market? Because
Mhm.
in a smaller to medium-sized business, sometimes it's very saturated, sometimes the competition is tight, and sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
Regardless, they are still targeted by the cyber criminals. Normally, I would ask those listen to what really they need to do,
Mhm.
what they want to do. Back to the superpower. My superpower is just listening to. Usually, it's just like therapy session. They come with
Okay.
all the issues everywhere, and I'm able to bring it and break it down for them and
Mhm.
ask about the priorities. When I
Mm.
ask about the priorities, everyone has definition of priorities differently.
For sure.
Just ask the priorities like a mini business impact analysis. If something were to happen to this particular system you just mentioned you're having issues
Mm.
with, how would it impact financially, reputationally, compliance with regulations, resources, all those? And we kind of just do light talked about that, but I start taking notes. And then in the next meeting, I presented the notes, said, this is what I've heard,
Mhm.
your the issues that you want to do and where you want to go for the future state. And I help visualize,
Mm.
breaking it down. This is from the system perspective, this is what I'm hearing. From the resources perspective, this is what I'm hearing. And then sometimes cultural perspective, right? This
Mm.
is what I'm hearing. We hash it out. And then from there on, so that became kind of my current state assessment. I don't really necessarily audit in a sense where um, I have the questions. I'm using the NIST cybersecurity framework. I have the questions usually formulated, but I'm not really asking them to be going to each question
Okay,
one
like
by
a check in the box. Yeah.
yeah. So then I presented the current assessment after we validated their story, and then also put in the visualization their future state where they want to be, and we start talking about the how to get there. Again, using priorities in the sense of if something were to happen, what would be the impact? And since we don't want to boil the oceans, I usually just say, give me the top five systems or areas that we want to work in within this time frame. Very, very simple formula. I don't like to complicate things because the problems themselves can be complex. If we address complex problem with technology, with other
Mm.
complexity, then in my past experience working for big organizations, we ended up just running around the circle.
Okay.
The
So yeah.
boundaries. Yeah.
Okay, I see. And I think like in big organizations for sure, just everything takes a lot of time, I guess, to implement, to discuss. And what were the particular, like the challenges that were applicable, you would say maybe uniquely to big organizations in oil and gas based on your experience?
Know about unique, but the unique part is OT and IT. That's in oil and gas, right? But
Okay.
in other organizations, it just translates into business and IT. But in the
Yeah.
oil and gas, you've got the operational technology, you've got the business, and you've got the IT. For operational technology, the OT side,
Hmm.
it's usually it's an industrial control system that are not TCP IP based. So they're
Okay.
legacy systems. They're very, very, very sensitive to any changes made that would impact operations and safety. So there's always been that friction just historically in the oil and gas.
Mm.
Before IT became an IT, OT existed. So the
Okay.
OT side usually say, hey, IT, you don't understand our operational. When you said that we have to have a minimum password of 14 characters, our systems can't do this. Therefore, we're not going to implement it because you don't
Mm.
understand. So is that friction, the OT and the IT, that's to me unique in the oil and gas. So it's not the technology actually, it's the culture, the
Okay.
challenge. Yeah.
When the culture is the challenge, it's very hard to change. So it's kind of also like it sounds like a battle between generations. I'm not sure, but have you seen like within the recent years, especially like within the explosions of all the data points that are available, there are like more and more IT that still becomes more important. With like all the applications that you have to secure, or it's still not yet the main issue.
It's gotten much better. It has
Okay.
improved since I've joined oil and gas. I started my career in oil and gas 2003. So how many years
Mm.
ago? 21 years ago.
Yeah.
um, it has improved significantly both the cultural and the technology. There's a lot more conversation, especially for the big organizations who've been targeted by the nation state,
Mm.
for
Yeah.
cyber crimes. And and then technology has improved to help kind of bridge the gap. That now they're able uh, to do some not necessarily integration directly,
Mhm.
but data capture in the OT side that can be translated to the IT side and vice versa. Like the logging collection on the OT side back then, before new technology came out, it was almost impossible
Yeah.
because there is no way to capture all the different log um, of activities to be fed into the sim. But now there's technology that helps capture
Mm.
and then feeds the information to the sim, and so that we can see somewhat of a bigger picture. And conversation also, as the news and media and everything, the awareness level also is getting more prominent,
Mm.
that the working relationship has gotten much better. So management is very much supporting of that effort.
Yeah, but I think that's great that there is a support, from the management on this, perspective, because I think sometimes things can be also very dangerous if, let's say, you were, on the production side and the temperature, you manipulate the temperature of the fluid within the pipeline somehow, like the hackers manipulate, and it goes past, yeah, past it's a boil point, the explosion point, and then it just explodes. Like there is basically the station, so there can be a risk, like very important, risk
Okay.
related to that. Have
Yeah.
you like encountered maybe stricter controls in some areas versus in others, or not?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And even oil and gas, you've got the upstream, midstream, and downstream. So
Mhm.
each one of the area is going to have different critical infrastructure area, right? Because um, like if they store highly flammable chemicals or process
Mhm.
flammable chemicals, yeah, the controls need to be much stricter than the other ones. Not necessarily not secure at all, but
Mhm.
just different level. Because if we try to put controls the same way using the highest restricted
Mhm.
controls, the adoption rate, it could impede operation.
Mhm.
So the adoption rate may not be as high, meaning that the personnel people say, okay, this is creating
Mhm.
more problems than not, we're not going to do it
Yeah.
versus trying to meet in the middle. Yeah. So definitely. So I mean, we still have more learning opportunities, more growth opportunities in the convergence of IT and OT. But since we were talking about since I started 2003, things have improved significantly, but we're still working together to make it better.
Yeah, I think it would be surprised if they wouldn't have improved. So that's great for this part, and I think other part that potentially you've seen improving is that relationship between manufacturers, between like the original equipment manufacturers, between owners like and operators, between the government. And you actually, I think, mentioned recently that it went like a but on a positive note with the release of the CISA, the security by design, I think, document that was developed by them and the FBI, if I'm not mistaken. So it's kind of improving the relationship. But do you think is it actually like improving, or like the industry is going to follow it or not?
It's with any type of growth when we're trying to grow to move the needles to improve any situation. It's not a linear activities, right? It's going to be a lot of breakage, a lot of resistance, a lot of other things before it's normalized into the kind of the where we want it to be. So it is with the Secure by Design that joint guidelines published by CISA and FBI. It's a good start. Again, it reaches both to the end user consumers, like day to day activity citizens, like we were talking about earlier, because say they buy, my goodness, every refrigerator you buy nowadays, I think by default comes with Wi Fi.
Really?
If for example my mother or someone's mother needing a new appliance, the new refrigerator,
Mm.
and then they buy it, they don't know the Wi-Fi is by default enabled. No,
No,
I
I
mean right
wouldn't
now.
know either, to be honest.
And how do they know how to secure it?
Mm.
How do they know? I mean, they would have to either call someone, or someone has to tell them, hey, mama, did you know that your refrigerator has a Wi-Fi that's actively looking, reporting
Mm.
back to the manufacturer or whatever the other side? And she probably would know. So, what Wi-Fi, right? And so I applaud the joint effort between CISA and FBI, because secure by design
Mm.
is requiring these OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, to integrate security throughout the product lifecycle management, even starting from the ideation, the design and ideation, right? Security needs to be integrated from there, because what they want to do is by the time the consumers receive the product, they don't have to worry about hardening that product.
Mhm.
Understandably, we still have to apply updates from time to
Yeah.
time, but it should be hardened when it comes out of the package, when the consumer plugs it to their household, however they want to use it, right?
Mhm.
So, for example, with either clear instructions, hey, the Wi-Fi by default is not disabled, very clearly, easy, and then to enable it is this, and then put some kind of guidance. This is make sure you change your password, something like that, right? Now, scaling it back to for enterprise
Mhm.
level industrial control systems, for example. The same way, currently our industrial control systems, when they were designed to operate, like we were talking about, to measure temperature, pressure, you name it, all that.
Mhm.
So when patches were usually sent, they also to address functionality but not security.
Yep.
So it is usually the burden of the operators, the owners, operators, in this case, oil and gas
Mhm.
company, to harden the industrial control systems, because the government said, especially with the TSA pipeline, the first directive, they said, yes, you have to have a minimum password of this much character.
Mm.
We thought them understanding, hey, the equipment cannot even, it's not compatible to apply that, right? So you see the
It's kind of
government,
useless guideline.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're not talking to each other.
Mm.
OEMs do not understand the owners operators needs and requirements. Like, yeah, there are but the government asked them to be in compliance, yet the equipment is not compatible to do so.
Hmm.
So that's the love triangle that we're talking about, that we need to
Okay.
start keep talking about it. The government needs to understand and also talks to the OEMs to say, hey, you need to integrate the security by design in your product. And then the government then can tell the owners operators, hey, you need to follow these security guidelines for compliance reasons, for safety reasons, and everything else. And then the OEMs and the owners operators also talk about, hey, when do you usually have your maintenance window? Because in
Mm.
the industrial control system, you can't just reboot your machine anytime a patch is applied,
No.
right? You have to schedule it.
Yeah.
So,
It's a lot
yeah,
of money.
exactly. If the OEMs understand that we don't necessarily allow a connection for the OEMs to come in to say deploy patches. No, so the OEM needs to understand the process, the procedures, and requirements of the owners operators. So that love triangle, we need a therapist to for the three of us to talk better.
Yeah. For the better communication between all of them. Like, how frequent do you think the communication should be? Because the directives, they don't come out every week. So, like, how frequent do you think should it be?
I don't think there's a magic number for that, Alexandra. It's a lot of. That's what I'm saying. Maybe I should be a cyber therapist, because
Right?
as a full-time CISO, your day is you think you have your priorities to do for this week.
Yeah.
Every day it changes. Something happens, and it's always so the progress is hard to make. That's
Mm.
internally that a CISO has to manage. Now
Right.
having to talk to government, having to talk to OEMs, it's whenever it happens, right? So really, there's not formula, but with the explosion or proliferation, I should say, of
Mm.
social media, and we can talk about it, we can make suggestion, and then with the infraguard, and we can also
Yeah.
make that suggestion in that forums. So it is right now more like an activism, in terms like when you have the
Yeah.
time, you have the passion, you bring it up, and then you keep repeating the issue until people hear and start realizing, okay, we need to do this together. So there's no, I don't have a formula, magic number, how frequently we should do
Mm.
it. I must say that, given my passion, we should talk about it every day.
Okay. Well, I think I mean that's this, as I said, social media. You're partially an influencer, so you can become an influencer on this, specific topic, because it's just it's important to raise the issues and talk about it and get support from the community, and only then things can actually happen. It's important to raise these issues and be outspoken about it, especially if you have the power to change things, like this your case, and when you can involve community around it, and share with the community who potentially share your ideas too. But still, I think it's a bit easier when you communicate with like equipment manufacturers who are more present on social media, and operators potentially as well, like LinkedIn. But the government is not always the case. So how would you because also you have like experience with collaborating with the White House. So how would you approach this part of of the triangle in addition to the therapy sessions? How would you like actually talk with them more, and what do you think actions are lacking from the government side to improve this relationship?
Yeah, I don't know if I individually can do this. All I can do and am willing to do is get together with other people. And it's not necessarily the power, but it's the power of a unity. And,
Mm-hmm.
right, the government is a big, the big organization.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and I've mentioned it in so many different occasions. Um, when there were government officials being guest speakers, I always ask these questions, right? So that's at least my effort in doing so. And at the same time, through having the cybersecurity circle, having talked with you also bringing the awareness up, talking to my peers. My hope is just is this is I know it's not unique. It's not just me doing this. It's everyone
Mm,
share. A lot of people shares the same concern. So that's my hope. Just gather people to start having a bigger voice, bigger platform where we can be seen and heard. And I don't really have I don't have the solidification of how we would do that, talking to the government, other than what we've been
mhm,
doing in the past when I worked with the White House. And every administration was different, right? So I had a connection with the director of the White House, the cybersecurity over there. So it was relationship and everything, so we could work together. Again, uh, every administration they change, so it's kind of
yeah.
hard to keep up and who the current one is. I have not gone for this current administration or the last one, the recent three presidency, probably two presidents. I've not been able to do that just because I don't have the time and the capacity
Mm,
to do it. Yeah.
yeah. So it's a lot about actually that establishing that connection there, and then making an impact. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it's a lot of it's actually you need to invest a lot of energy, a lot of human part for sure. So it's probably the toughest. Do you actually think it's one of the toughest things to do?
To talk about this.
Yeah, to
Uh,
talk about like to make the change there.
yeah, I know it's not easy.
Mm.
Back to I keep putting this the goal. We don't want the bad guys to win.
Yeah.
I keep thinking that that's what motivates me. So even though the journey is not easy, a lot of challenges, takes a lot of energy, like you said, investment in that energy and time. But I have that goal for us not to let the bad guys win, so their journey becomes kind of manageable. And then I do
Mm.
reach out for help. I ask people to help. I ask people to be speaking about it at other platforms as well. So it is again a community effort that I'm trying to do.
Yeah, that's great. And do you think in the future the community will play the most important role, or
I
what kind of? Yeah.
I hope so because there's a lot. Remember, cybersecurity is not, especially the role of a CISO, is still in the infancy stage compared to the role of a CFO, a COO, right? Like CFO, especially, they've been around for centuries, accounting, all, everything about business. Cybersecurity roles is just the past 2 decades that, and not every role has the same authority and influence, kind of power. I don't like to use the
Yeah.
word power, but the influential
Yeah.
seat. So we still need to change that. And but I think there's a lot more interest in the field. We all know that there's like at least 4.5 million deficit in the global cybersecurity talents. So the needs are there. The interest, people who want to be in the cybersecurity community and profession is there. It just takes time for us to now connect the dots, preparing the pipeline, educating them, bringing them up, and then really elevating the role of the CISO to be sitting with the business. It's not an IT function, but it's a business function together at the same level with the CFO, the COO, and reporting to the CEO and so forth.
And do you think it's in like 5 to 10 years, let's say, is it gonna be changed more, lift up to the level of that business function, or what, or it will take probably longer, in your opinion?
I hope within 5 years, especially with the recent SEC ruling
Mm,
requiring right the reporting of the incidents
yeah.
um, for business days. So that is actually start elevating the CISO role. That hey, the
Mm,
CISO is no longer in the back room managing operations day to day. They need to be at the seat of the table because they need to work with the business, agreeing on what is materiality. Right?
mm,
It's the
yeah.
business that determines that. The CISO only presents the risks, not only, but presents the risk, but not accepting the risk,
Mhm.
communicating that with the business and everything else. I hope within 5 years, at least the CISO's level is going to be elevated more towards the business, and it's going to be different for every size of organization. The vertical too. Financial industry is more mature than other industry, for example. Uh, but we are moving towards the right direction. It's going to be lots of pain, growing pain, but we're moving towards the right direction.
Like a lot of therapy sessions in between for everyone. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. But the result will be there. And there's one question that I always ask the podcast, like, especially I think you have a daughter, right?
Two
Who's with
daughters.
who's with $2, yeah.
Yeah.
So if they would suddenly decide to actually get a career in cybersecurity, like what steps would you advise them to take, and what would you recommend them, like if they start their new role, to actually implement in the first place?
It's not even for my two daughters. This is for anyone who want to have a career in cybersecurity. Because I also I'm part of the trainers in this minorities cybersecurity. So I teach
Mm,
leadership and different careers in cybersecurity. Where to start? What I want to demystify about cybersecurity career is you do not have to be a technical person to have a
mm,
career in cybersecurity. We've got data privacy, right? You've got the risk assessment, third party risk assessment
mm,
is very, very, very important. The technical
mm,
parts, helpful, very helpful. You need to understand the fundamental of IT and technology and cyber. But
mm.
to start with, actually, I have, maybe I should share this with you, like a career roadmap to start with.
Okay.
It's just identifying what you like and you don't like, what you're good at and what you're not good at. Start with that
Mm-hmm.
fundamental. I'm gonna write down actually
I
roadmaps
think
and
you can, if you have a link, you can share we can share the link afterwards in the podcast, or make like a photo and put it online, so that people, after, in the video description, they can access that.
maybe I'll put that in the LinkedIn link, right?
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
don't because it's part of my the teaching that I do, with
Mhm.
the roadmap. But again, simple. You have to know what you want and what you're good at, and then also do the ikigai method. This is a Japanese way of
Mhm.
doing, living
Yeah.
with your values, right? What you're good at, what your passion is, what pays, because you want to
Mm.
make money, and then what the world needs. So there's that exercise, and I usually share that with because I do that myself. even I do it multiple times a year, and then I've been doing it for years. The results, some of them have changed, some of them have remained the same. So it's always good to see that you go back and say, oh, I used to be, I wanted to do that. Why don't I think about it anymore? Things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, let me see. But I will do that. And then there are now free resources out there, just the fundamentals of cybersecurity. What do you want to do? And talk to people who have been in the field and reach out. And most of us, and one of the things that now I have my own firm, I have more capacity to mentor people. In the past, I did not have that much time. But there's a lot of organizations right now, cybersecurity organization, like especially for the underrepresented group, right? Minorities in
Yeah.
cybersecurity, Cyversity,
Yeah.
T200, Executive Women Forum. They have all the different resources how you can get started. I think the challenge is more understanding to narrow it down, because there's so many
Mm.
options out there. The more
Yes.
challenge,
But yeah.
yeah. What do you want to
Yeah.
do? Start with that why. What do you want to do to not let the bad guys win? Do you really want to be? And then you can be a lawyer doing this as well, right? Because
Yeah.
then, yeah. Um, So to get started, just simple things. Write down what do you want to do, what you're good at, and then match it with all the different resources of career in cybersecurity, and start from there. But I will send the roadmap link. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be great if you could share that. And one last question for you. So, if you would have to advise one cybersecurity book, what would it be?
Book, you said?
Yes, book to read
Ooh.
about, I don't know, different, yeah, and cybersecurity.
So here, to me, books and cybersecurity is not about the theory and everything else, because cybersecurity is about, first, if you want to be the cybersecurity professional, think like a bad guy.
Mm.
So your practical day-to-day lives is preventing, reducing the risk, so that we won't be victims of those cyber
Yes.
criminals, right? And so in order to do that, I read all kinds of books. I read comics, I read leadership, I read fiction. But this cybersecurity book, actually, I'm going to open up. I listen because I do Audible. I
Mm-hmm.
multi. I walk. I exercise, and it's called "Breaking the Backbones" by Deb. Oh, hang on here. She has three series. It's fascinating. It's a combination of real cybersecurity theories, but in a fictional.
Okay.
Yeah, Breaking Backbones by Deb Radcliffe. She has, it's a
Okay.
trilogy.
I'll
There are
also
three
put
books.
the.
Breaking Backbones by Deb Radcliffe.
Okay, I will definitely put that in the link as well. And thank you so much for sharing. And thank you so much for sharing your experience on the podcast. It was a pleasure talking to you. Excited to meet you in real life very soon.
Yeah, that's right. RSA, we're gonna meet for coffee, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
time, Alexandra.